Hello, welcome to Timeless Conversation. My guest today is best known for his connection to culture. He is a culture administrator, a culture icon, culture royalty, and indeed, he is a culture activist. He served in the formulation of the cultural policy for Lagos State, for Nigeria, and even fashioning out a culture identity, which, if the policy had been properly implemented, would have really thrown the importance of culture in nation building to the fore. It's my pleasure to welcome to the program His Royal Majesty, Oba Gbenga Gbadebo Shonuga. Oba Gbenga Shonuga is the Fadishewa of Shimawa in Makun, Shagamu, Ogun State. His love and obsession for the arts and culture is remarkable. Before ascending the throne, he had served as Director, Lagos State Council for Arts and Culture. Oba Shonuga has been a trailblazing culture administrator, a distinguished culture activist, and theatre practitioner with vast international exposure. By virtue of his current position, he is naturally a royal patron of the arts. Kabiesi is the Fadishewa of Shimawa. Kabiesi, I must commend the fact that you look very young. What's your secret? You look healthy?
Well, there's no real secret. Some of us are showmen. Remember, we are theater artists, basically. So when we act, we put on the costume, we put on the appearance. But we thank God that one is in fairly good shape. I went from a very active life to a fairly sedentary profession or occupation. But we thank God. We have not had any major accident, and we have not suffered any great illness.
Yeah. We thank the Almighty on your behalf.
Yeah.
I want us to cast our minds back to your early days. I know that your father served in the Nigeria Railway Corporation and moved from one station to the other, and of course, you moved with him. But there was a period of stability, and that was your years at what we call a Jabba. Up I see.
Up I say?
Yes, sir. So what was that like?
Oh, well, the first 10 years, basically, that I spent with my parents was just being a happy child. And I don't remember any untoward incident that could have derailed one. But when I was going to enter Igbo College, the year before, my father was transferred back to Ibadan for his final stage before resigning. And in my autobiography, I mentioned that I started writing him letters on that occasion. And I can remember the first one saying, Ominu Komi, Ayun Yumi, I miss home. I have some of those letters reprinted in my autobiography.
Yes.
But Igbo College soon took all that away. Because once you cross the gate, at Igbo College, everybody, you fall into line. the timetable was for every hour of the day.
Naturally, you were bored out.
Yes, because at that time there are only 200 students in Bowie, 50 in each house, and there were regimental, duties for everybody. So, and I had a long relationship with Igbobi.
Yes.
After my NCE years, I went back to teach for a while. After my graduation in Adiba, I also went back there, and I could see the changes setting in from generation to generation.
I was actually going to ask you that. Why did you go back twice to teach at
Well,
Igbo?
because I went to the Teachers College
Yes.
on a bond with Igbobi College.
Okay.
They part sponsored it, and federal government part sponsored it.
Okay.
So the agreement was that when you finish, you come back and teach until your bond is over or some other arrangement is put
Right.
in.
Okay. And
So
then when you finished your degree, you came back from France and
yes,
yes.
because I only spent 9 months before between NCE and going back to university.
Yes.
I only worked for from January to September. So I still had the bond to serve.
Yeah, please still recalling your childhood at Ibobi. Do you remember some of your classmates?
Oh, very well, because some of us kept together for 50 years.
Wow,
2 years ago, we had a reunion. 50 years after leaving Igbobi College.
fantastic.
I'm from a class of uh, 34, 36. We still had 20-something members. But some of them have since also joined their forebears, but it developed in one the sense of eternal friendship and support for each other, whoever. There was no inkling anywhere of people being different or one child being different from another. Everybody followed the rules. It didn't matter whether your parents were rich or poor. It didn't matter whether you were Igbo or Hausa. Whatever was happening to you was happening to everybody. And it gave us a solid base of knowing how to interrelate and be friends.
Okay. So as you did that, I'm tempted to ask you this question straight away. So you
Yeah.
haven't mentioned the name of any of your classmates who come back to you.
Okay. Yeah, I can quickly do
Okay,
that.
okay,
Most importantly was the former governor of Lagos State.
okay.
Simply because when we then left Igbobi College, because he was also my friend, not just my classmate,
Yes.
we knew where we were going and we kept in touch. So when he then became governor, I had informed him 3 years earlier about the interview for the job and said I may be coming back to Lagos. I was living in Ibadan then. Then nothing. So 3 years later was when he then asked, but you said you are coming to Lagos. What happened? And I said, well, I don't know. Maybe you can find out. Which he did by calling maybe for the file and for the situation. And then they discovered there was no real reason. I was, tipped to come after the interview, the results were out. And so eventually he then asked, why didn't you call this guy? And he said, well, at the time he applied, it was for his level 16 office. Now they have downgraded to 15, so maybe he will not like to come. And he said, yeah, ask him. Anyway, that was how it went. But at the end, I didn't want to go until he said, Gbenga, whatever you are doing in Ibadan will benefit you and a few people I know. But if you come and work for government, you'll be benefiting millions of people with your knowledge. So he was my number one fan. Even and the funny part of it was that one other classmate, Akinyemi, and I were clowning
That's Body Academy
Body Akinyemi
of EMI.
and of EMI.
Yes.
Another
He
of
was an
my class.
accountant.
Yes. Another of my friends. Alex Ibru was my classmate. Um and so many other Demola Edu.
Yes.
It was a small company. We were divided into the four houses, and we were only 34
Yeah.
in the whole class of one arm.
Okay.
The last one arm in
Okay,
Igbo
right. That's
college.
cool. So let's make some progress. I want to ask you, what pushed you to culture? Or did culture choose you? Or you chose culture?
Well,
I know you read theater arts, you read drama and French, and you were an active actor, if that could be said.
yeah.
What was it?
No, the first thing is that if you watch a 3-year-old just behaving, you could, as a good parent, you could easily see in which direction that child will grow. You may not have it spot on, but you have an idea. And if the child also goes from that age and goes further, I read books day and night. It became a tradition to say, Gbenga, Shonuga, I'm after you when you finish that novel. And I said, no, you're after Akinyemi. And if Akinyemi had a novel, and he said after, we even, apart from the library books, we exchange books and comics and all that. And then like to play at Robin Hood, whatever, we carve. So the whole thing was a theatrical future. So in the arts, my best performances were in the arts, English literature. So bit by bit, by the time I then got out ready for university, people like Wale Soyinka were prominent. So one patterned one's future thing, and one was attached to them, Segun Olushola, Femi Johnson, because he was an insurance guru, but was a good actor and appeared in many of the plays. He was also Wale Soyinka's friend. So that was the path I kept going, and my parents did not, like most other parents you may know, discourage me in any way, except that when I was playing too much, they had to give me rules that kept me
In check.
in check. So it was that I chose the arts chose me. Then when I then went abroad for my year abroad, I saw that the training we were getting in the university was not very adequate to prepare us for a future where you do things, not that government will employ you, give you a car, and so on. So I was disillusioned. I didn't want to come back. But my late brother, who was in London then, said, look, go and finish. You have only 1 year. Then you can come back. But by the time I graduated from UI, Nigeria also had claimed its own priority.
Yes.
And I didn't feel like going back and staying abroad. So that was, remember, teaching was my first assignment. But soon thereafter, I happened to hear about the Masimoko. I went back to Ibadan and saw what he was doing. And that was it. I needed that challenge to do everything in the art, because we started from a philosophical base. Why do people do things they do? Why do they do them to perfection? Why do they lay examples? So that was how all that went.
You were in Ibadan for a while, and then after that, you got appointed to the position of Director, Arts and Culture, Lagos State Council for Arts and Culture. I remember vividly that time. You had more energy and you were bubbling all over the place. Set up the state standing troop,
Mm.
and all those efforts paid off. By 1992, the state standing troop won the gold gong at NAFEST
Uh,
92. Looking back then, what does that make you feel like?
Oh, it makes me feel great because of the sense of satisfaction and achievement. But everything I did within those less than a decade in Lagos, I had planned for the period from the previous 10 years that I spent with Dimasumoko. Because 1 year after I finished or 1.5 years or two, after graduated, I was teaching. I was teaching with an NC certificate, so I was earning more money than ordinary graduates. Life was good. I was living in Lagos. School ended at 1 or 2. My friends were all over the Olumide Phillips, lived next door, and all that. All the old friends were around. Every weekend there was a party to go to. And sometimes in a group we would go to Ikoyi till 12 midnight for the party and then set out for Ikeja. There. So it was a merry go round. Lagos was good, and safe.
It was safe, security was still good.
But then I knew I couldn't continue like that. I needed a bigger challenge. I told myself. Then when somebody mentioned the Mazumoko, I went to it because we both had a mutual girlfriend who was the one who said, from the way you are doing and talking, you should go and work with Dimasumoko. And I said, for what? I said he has very good ideas, he's building a studio and all. So and I went. And I saw what he was doing, quite impressive. Dimas does not believe that the African mind cannot think and accomplish the most difficult task in the world. Whether it was in machinery, whether it was with construction, whether it was with building a play, whether it was with painting a picture, everything about the arts, he had developed theories about how to perfect the training of an artist. But I was the first and only student or attaché, or what do they call mentee,
Yeah, like a mentee to him.
who stayed for 10 solid years.
One whole decade.
So that I came to Lagos and started performing was because I had gone through all these things 10 years, the previous 10 years. And people had wondered, Gbenga, what are you doing here? And I said, look, this place this fellow has built in Ibadan. If nobody stays or even understand what he's doing, then, we'll be. So, like I used to tell myself at that time, I was apprenticed to a Gideon. So when I came, of course, the arts provide you with a lot of creativity. And therefore, there was no lack of suggestion. The play that we did for Buhari in 85, we took to San Francisco, if you remember, in 86.
Yeah.
They came 5 years later, and look, there were so many things that were so unusual. Is that art and culture also? Yes, because Lagos is exactly in the position that San Francisco is to the arts world. Just as Lagos is to Abuja. Abuja is the capital, but Lagos. And during my stay, if you will remember, Lagos gradually became a mecca for artists.
Yes, it did.
That was where you will come, and even if you are crazy, you can do something. You can put you up, and before you know it, you can be dancing or doing your crazy thing before the head of state.
Yeah.
If you are rascally and you don't know which direction to go, go and see the director of arts and culture. We even were involved with urban planning and renewal. Everything that I did in Lagos State for about 8.5 years, I had thought of doing or acquiring knowledge the previous year. That was the best time of my life. That was when eventually I got married, where I started having my children, before the. Of course, I also formed a company, film company. That was another direction. I was. I started with film distribution and production partnerships.
Yes.
I started by bringing films that were relevant to the black world, like Tony Awards,
Yes.
where the color line disappears usually, and so on and so forth. So, doing what was a breeze, because it took time. I started by learning how to change my voice, from the normal voice to an acting delivery voice of a Ewi. Adunwade do Agdele ni o, Adunwade do ni Agdele. Because Dimas, we sat down and he said, "You are an actor, Abi, but you have a Kewi."
Yeah.
And I was like, Ewi, that's my home baby. But he said, "Go and record everything, Department of African Studies, and then you repeat, because your acting voice cannot be your normal
voice. Yeah.
voice. You had to train." And that was striking. So I developed training classes in all aspects of the arts.
And this was something you transferred to the Council for Arts and Culture.
That was
because I remember the performance of the standing troupe then.
Yeah, because that was the most reasonable thing to do.
Then they staged a play called Ori.
That's the one I said we took to America.
To America, yes.
The following year.
Yes.
And people were saying, he's going to America. Although everybody really, because those who came to that production,
yes,
that the head of state came,
yes,
they were amazed out of, because from a page, one page of presentation, this Ori means, and it had a strong message.
Yes, it did.
That Nigeria's head is a good one, but care must be taken by the leaders not to lose the good head, or else Nigeria will become Olori Buruku, which does not, in Yoruba language, is a disastrous appellation.
Okay, we'll just take a break now. Right. Hold that thought and we'll come back. Welcome back. Yeah, Kabisi.
Thank you.
You were given the analogy of Ori, the explanation, how care had to be taken that Nigeria's Ori does not become Olori Buruku. What you're talking about was like about how many years ago? Almost 40 years ago.
Yeah.
Today,
well, Allah might get key Nigeria Olori Buruku.
Asha.
But the way we are going, I think I mentioned the analogy.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that.
Yeah.
The relevance of culture in nation building, and you started with that analogy of a plane.
Some people, when people have gone on board of a plane, the people who fly it are experts. They took time to learn.
Yeah.
The engineers that built the plane have done excellent work. To even allow it to fly at all, take off from the ground. And then when it goes beyond the clouds, then suddenly there's a problem. We know it happens.
Yes.
When an engine fails and the plane is far from any airport, if the second engine does not fail, maybe they may still crash land somewhere. If the two engines fail, which has also happened before, the plane is going to come down. It's not a curse or an abuse of. It will come down slowly until it hits ground. And when it does, everything scatters. Everybody is gone. Well, if you compare that with Nigeria, we took off, and now there's a problem. One engine is not working. And while the engineers who usually are on board are working at what they need to do to repair the engine or do something, the hostesses are calming people down. Please sit down. The pilot is fighting with a plane that was going to go out of control. And then the second engine failed. And people are shouting God and Shideke and Allah. You know, those who are making the noise are the passengers. Whether experienced flyers or not, they cannot do anything.
Yes.
They will just be shouting or praying. But if that plane starts coming down because of two failed engines, it cannot just crash land safely. It will hit the ground with such force, everything will scatter. Nigeria is on a path that is going to lead to disaster if if something is not done.
Yes, Kabisi, you were explaining to me with that analogy of the flying plane and all that, that suddenly has a problem and leads into Nigeria's one. What is the solution? How do we save or salvage our country or society?
Yeah. I'm not. I don't look into the crystal ball, and I'm not a babalawo.
Yeah, but they say the words of our elders are words
Yes,
of
yeah,
wisdom.
but I can give a very good uh, pronouncement
Yes.
on that falling plane. And most Nigerians have already concluded that it's only God. So for those who are praying, let them keep praying. But praying for the engineers who are fixing the plane to bring it alive again. Praying for the pilot who must retain his good senses, but a borders on leadership, but also on followership. Nigeria got itself into a situation whereby you will know all the problems about Nigeria. Every problem, any bar, drinking bar, any office gathering, any social gathering, ask them, oh, Nigeria has problems. They will count it up for you. When you say, how do we get out of it? Well, it's only God that will help us. So, taken in that sense, but the culture will not change, will not be built, in fact, I said will not be born, or will be stillborn if we do not change. But Buhari used that as a winning card, but Nigerians have not changed. It's all right to say he's our president, yeah, but the point is that if he changes, things will continue the way they are. They will simply find a way of political solution. But we have to know that the road we did not take 60 years ago is going to start not with our leaders, unfortunately, but with us. Because let me tell you, things change, nations change, either through a revolution or a change of leadership with an ideology. Does it surprise you that Nigeria has no ideology? And no party comes with any ideology except to win the election. So when they then get there, they are not following ideological, lines. The SARS issue suddenly brought up a lot of other problems but with a glimpse of solution. The young ones know there must be change.
Mm.
And they are insisting is the leaders who will change. All they do want to do is work out strategy on how. Are you going to engage the nation in debate after debate? What will happen in 2023? Is there going to be a new party for slowly young men? Or are they going to adopt some people? So the solution is in the future. But if everybody decides to say this thing must come, both in our voting patterns, both in the campaigns that will come up
Yes.
before the election, it will, I don't see us getting out of the woods until after that election.
Until after the elections.
Yeah.
And you just hinted at the fact that the younger generation, the youth, will have a key role to play in that.
That is my belief.
That's your belief.
Yeah. Because no way we are not going to, there's not going to be a future president who's been in the military hierarchy since Nigeria was formed.
Mm.
We should not, the voters should not allow that.
Mm.
If you are a general and you are still there, it's like the police force. Until they retire everybody who's been there for the last 50 years, you cannot have a clean police force because that's how they were absorbed. So if it's a signal, I'm hoping the young ones in that bracket will get their shoe together, have leaders of thought, leaders of strategy, and all that, but above all, determined to avoid all the pitfalls. And if we vote for them, that's the most benign change you can have. If we then, or everybody now votes for the other Amade Abagba, votes for that combination which they will come up with, it will give Nigeria another chance. Otherwise, it's like the plane. It's inevitable. If you don't, so maybe if we all feel that way. So if we have been used to certain things which we know are really corrupt,
Mm.
not useful for building a nation, not fair to others, as individuals, we must stand to say, if the change comes, me, I will change you.
Okay.
Or from the beginning, me, I will change. What we have been told, and there are countless issues.
Yes.
So unless people now change completely and show that pattern in their voting, one party sweeps the polls. How can you? What have you done? Or what have you not done
Yes.
that others will not do? So I did an analysis during the last voting exercise, and I said, well, whether it's APC or PDP, things are not going to change. The only thing we may benefit from at that time was that Buhari has a posture of anti-corruption, which I think he means.
Mm.
It's just that when it now embarked upon it and corruption started fighting back, his own people started hiding behind him.
Yeah, but there's something being said about that, that corruption has more or less become part of the Nigerian culture. And that is bizarre. If corruption is part of our culture and we accept it so, then how are we getting out of it? And
Well,
then brings up the question, what's the real difference between culture and tradition?
good. So, in Yoruba tradition, to
Yeah.
say the least, and it can be said for all, being a thief is not seen as being a cultured or acceptable norm.
Mm.
Being Olosha was the worst word for armed bandit.
Armed robbery. Yes.
Being a kidnapper, being a thief with your pen or with your hand, it's not done. People denigrate such people until it becomes what they cannot afford to do openly.
Yes.
The problem is poverty for most of Nigerians. But poverty does not mean stealing other people's goods. So in this instance, what we are aiming for is to say, if it's a new culture, but yeah, if people have a Yoruba saying that says, olóògùn òun ló tó ń ṣe ọkọ àbíkú.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Tí àbíkú bá fojú rere olóògùn á kán oògùn sójú ojú yẹn á tún gbé padà wá láyé. I have a theory in my book that if politicians were elected at least through a process that is similar to what happened in a traditional setting
Yes.
of electing Obas,
Mm.
who are supposed to be leaders but not so now. They have no role in the constitution. But there's a process. Already there will be a tradition in this particular area. When an Oba dies, the new one will be selected. The Afobagers are the following. Ndosi, Isa, Apeno, it will be. Now we are trying to put it down for every Oba, at least in Lemon Island. And then, so there's a procedure. You cannot become an Oba suddenly because you are rich enough to be one.
Or influential.
Or influential. You will belong to it. It's not corruption free.
I was going to say that.
Yes, but you cannot now go and bribe people to say you are from a ruling house where you are not.
But Kabisi, even people from the ruling houses have been known to bribe the kingmakers or even the Ifa diviner.
In fact, that is where I'm saying the process specifies that you divine before you elect your number.
Yeah.
Then by the time you are presented, you must have been presented by ruling house. It must have come to the turn of your family. So by the time the kingmakers are receiving any bribe, it is because there will be about 3 or 4 choices, and one person or 2 people want to get them more than the other person. So it curtails the area of corruption and bribery to a point.
Yeah.
And once they do that, they have no influence whatsoever over the Oba anymore.
But that means that there's actually a very thin line dividing culture and tradition.
Well, no, not exactly.
Okay.
I was struggling to explain.
Okay.
Tradition is the way we've done it, always done it. We established it over many years. Culture needs to be negotiated.
Okay.
A new culture. That's why my stay at New Cultural Studios, that's one of the great lessons that I took, a new culture.
So what you just described now is a new culture.
What is going to happen is the new culture. It hasn't happened.
Yes.
We have to renegotiate it.
Okay.
We have to say this can happen. This. So if you are going to waste your money, wait until the outcome.
Okay.
Then do not deceive people. It will then be a king contest between our princes.
Yes.
Unfortunately, there's no school for training Obas. You get there through these methods and then you perform or not.
So if we take it to the political scene, you're suggesting that there must be a commonly agreed process?
Yeah.
Mutually beneficial to society?
which we need to develop. Under the craft here,
Yes.
when I joined Lagos State Council for Arts and Culture, the mandate for the council, totally the was to say Lagos State Council was established to promote the arts and culture of Lagos State. Period. They didn't tell you how you are going to do it. They didn't tell you what will be part of it. The little guide was that culture and the arts means anything, architecture, painting, drawing, and everything associated with it. Finish. So when I began to expand the meaning of culture to include everything that builds a nation, it was, well, surprising to some, but they didn't have that time to even doubt. Because they were seeing certain things happening. Eléyìí dà, eléyìí I support. When I took Eyo
Yes.
to Abuja, they called me, our Adimu
Yeah.
invited me to say, we like what you are doing, but don't overdo things, don't cross lines. Eyo is not supposed to travel across the bridge, and I took it to Abuja. And they told me how they will do all the deep secrets of Eyo. But it's simple. By the end of their own discussion, I apologized. When we were going to for this cultural festival in Abuja, Lagos had nothing to show that it had a solid practice in culture, or cultural development. So I used the example of the Eyo. And yes, it came via the water. So that's why I limited the Lagos Island. But on your day, come and see Lagos. If you start lifting their veil, Hausa is there, Igbo is there, and it's organized by the Igas. And the Igas include any and everybody who cares to be.
Yes.
And it's a massive crowd collector.
Yes.
And that makes people feel part of Lagos.
Part of the culture.
And it was the only thing that we could demonstrate. They just said, Ogbere. But kìíní kan. Mi ò sọ fún wọn pé ṣèbí Ìbẹ̀fún ìpẹ̀rù
through Ìbẹ̀fún.
Kìíní
That's how it came now.
kí lẹ́mí nǹkan kò lè cross bridge. They amended their own views about it also. But we all know from research and other things, that's where Eyo comes from.
Yes.
But by the time you now put up an Eyo show in Lagos, it's overwhelming.
Yeah.
And it has meaning, and it's therapeutic. At the end of the day, everybody has exhausted their exuberance. So, meaning there is going to be a difficult process. We have to have enlightened people involved in this issue. We have to have strategic thinkers and planners involved. The amount of, again, there's another book I wrote, An Introduction to Cultural Activism in Nigeria. It was meant to be with the support of NICO, National Institute for Cultural Organization. But they just denied paternity, and the books are still lying in the printer's shop in the Korodu.
But you see, what that shows now is that for someone like you whose entire life has been built around culture, it's hard to even call you a retired culture activist. Because though you're retired from active work in culture, you actually ascended the throne. More or less, you retired into culture.
Yes, that's that. And that's what I'm trying to do within the limited confines of monarchy. Again, in the book, the Committee of Monarchs is Chapter 9,
Yes.
and it's suggesting that if only the Obas who happen to be in a unique position,
Yeah.
simply because the respect for traditional authority is what they have to enjoy now. Obas are not, stipend is what they get. They are not treated specially. If you fall sick, you go and look after yourself. There are no, there's nothing beyond what 5% of what the local government in each area gets among the Obas. But I'm saying if the Obas could only begin to think of themselves, you know, as leaders and molders, they are not keepers of culture.
Mm.
They should be promoters
Of
of
culture.
culture and keepers of tradition.
May I ask this final question, sir?
Yes.
Are you going to canvass for a constitutional role for the monarchy or the traditional institution in Nigeria?
That's what I'm doing currently. Remo, incidentally, is now trying to form a constitution because the new Akaribo,
Hmm.
coming from his background in business, he's an accountant, a lawyer, and all that, and he has money because he's been in the
Business.
business of making money and keeping it and making companies work and all that. He now has put down a fund called the Remo Growth and Development
From
Foundation.
okay.
And we are now in the process of developing a constitution. And before it's been drafted, but before it's ratified, it has been sent to all the Obas
Hmm.
and all members of GF. And you will see that a lot of work has gone. You cannot capture any. That's why they amend constitutions. But I said, please, number one, there must be a cultural agenda. Number two is that Obas need to have a role. Not like the constitution federal. Give us a role. You will be leaders as you are supposed to be, and you'll be responsible for the environmental cleanliness, or you get the funding, the matching. They are now trying to develop programs that will require matching funds.
Okay.
So the idea is that the Obas themselves need a reformation. Not everybody is clever. Not every Oba, but Oba Mewa Agba Mewa is how you do it, but it can be helped. You can be trained. You can understand cultural ideas. You can call meetings regularly that develop what the people bring.
That
Not
just ties. It just ties in with what you said that we need an enlightened people, and we must enlighten society as to where we're going.
definitely. That's how culture grows.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Thank
once
you very much, Kaviesi, for your time and for the knowledge you have imparted to us. Amari Basa.
I don't know.
Thank you, sir.
Sure.
And that's it for this edition of our program. I hope you have enjoyed it and I hope you have learned something. Culture is very important. Culture is needed for nation building. Culture promotes the future generation. Till we see you again next time on this program. This is
Wonderful.
Lekon Ogunbawo. Thank you very much.